As an undiagnosed neurodivergent child, I struggled hugely to make friends, and it had a major impact on me. However, it was even more heartbreaking to see my own children struggling to make friends and not really know how to help them. Hi everyone, I'm Lisa, and I'm a late diagnosed neurodivergent person. I discovered my own neurodivergent diagnosis, like many parents, as I looked for help, support and eventually diagnosis for my own children. They're both in their teens now, but they did spend a lot of their early childhood, all of the primary school years, undiagnosed too. Over the years, I've tried a huge number of different ways to help and support them in making and keeping friends. So, here are my top 5 tips for helping neurodivergent kids make friends. Tip number 1. Help them to understand what a friend is. Now, I know this sounds really obvious, but trust me, it might not be as obvious as we think. My own younger child, who at the time was 11, during their autism diagnosis, they were asked the question, how do you know if somebody's your friend? I was sitting in the room and I could see that they were stumped. And eventually the answer that they gave was, if they tell me they're my friend. And I have to say that really just broke my heart. Our neurodivergent kids are vulnerable. They're vulnerable to people taking advantage of them, to people who tell them something but don't actually mean it, who don't follow through with their actions. So helping our neurodivergent kids to understand exactly what being a friend is, what it means, what it looks like, is the first step to helping them to actually make friends. One of the ways that we can help them to understand what a friend is to explicitly talk about it. I think there's the assumption that it's just something everybody knows, which it might be for neurotypical people, but we're not neurotypical. And many things that neurotypical people take for granted, we need to have explicitly explained, pointed out, discussed with us. So do that with your children. Talk to them about what friends do, about what friendship looks like, what it means. Find examples wherever you can. If you're watching something on TV, pause for a minute and say, is that person being a good friend? Why? Why not? We should also help our children to recognise that friendship is a two-way street. So yes, they can expect their friends to be kind to them, to share things with them, to ask questions about their interests, but that means that their friends can also expect that in return. So helping our children to understand explicitly that it is a give and take relationship. So building up those skills to recognise that if one person shares their toys with you, that usually means that they would like you to share your toys with them too. If somebody asks you some questions about something you really like talking about, after a little time, then it's your turn to ask them some questions about what they want to talk about, and helping them to understand that reciprocal relationship. Another really good thing to focus on in understanding friendship is helping our neurodivergent kids look at the importance of actions, not just words. So like my younger child, a friend is somebody who says they're your friend. We need to help them to look beyond just what people are saying to see what they're doing as well. A lot of times, unfortunately, our neurodivergent kids picked on, teased, possibly bullied by children who pretend to be their friend. Our children won't necessarily recognise that this is not genuine. We need to help them to distinguish genuine interactions. Following on from that is also getting our children to think about how being with this person makes them feel about themselves. If they don't help us to feel good about ourselves, then they're not going to be a good friend, even if their intention is genuine. Tip number 1, to recap, is that we need to help our children to understand what it means to be a friend. Tip number 2, we need to show them what friendship looks like. This can take a wide range of different forms. I know when I was a young parent, I had just moved to the UK. I had 2 young children. I had no support system. I had no friends here, nobody that I knew at all. I wasn't working, I was a stay-at-home mom. And I was totally isolated. I found that very, very difficult. And even more so because I really wanted to be able to show my children what friendship looked like, but I didn't have any myself. So one of the things that I did a lot of in those early years was play. I played with my children. We did lots of role plays, we did lots of playing with toys, and we acted out all sorts of different scenarios. So we did lots of role play, so just them and me pretending. So you pretend you're your friend and I'll pretend I'm you, and we'll do this scene and we'll see what happens. Or we acted out with toys, so if there's a situation or if there's a social skill that your child is struggling with, so maybe they're struggling with sharing at the moment, then make sure that that gets into the play with the toys. So one toy wants to share and the other toy doesn't want to, and we look at why. So what are they afraid of? Why are they worried about sharing? Why do you think the other person does want to share? And how can they interact and how can they solve this together? Social stories. Now, this is something that I had heard about years ago and didn't really know what it was, but it's actually really, really simple, and it's something that you can do yourself. And it's basically to just tell a really, really simple story highlighting the particular social communication skill that you want your child to focus on. So it can just be written, but I think it's way more effective with pictures. If you're not big on drawing, I'm not, you can find all sorts of, stick figures and things like that you can download. You can use clip art, you can do all sorts of things like that. You can even actually encourage your kids to help you so they can draw the stick figures for you, and then you can write in some of the dialogue. And it's just a really, really simple way of helping our children to actually visualize these scenarios and to see how it could act out, what they could say, what they could do in these situations. And it helps them to explore different possibilities as well. Another key way, of course, of showing what friendships look like is to actually demonstrate them yourself, which can be quite difficult to do if you're also neurodivergent and have difficulty making friends. But this is something that I did as well over time. And I think really probably the most important thing is to just talk to your children about it, be honest with them in an age appropriate way, obviously, but talking to them about making friends, about how mum has friends, how, for example, mum has friends in a different country that she doesn't see very often and she misses them, and she'd like to have some friends here but she hasn't met anybody yet, so what should she do? And so I did that. I was really lucky when the children were younger and I was able to be there a lot of the time at drop off and pick up from school, and so I was able to screw up my courage and go to talk to some other parents on the playground and to try and make friends with some of them, which I did eventually. So tip number 2, show, demonstrate. Tip number 3, give them opportunities to practice. So everybody, neurotypical or neurodivergent, needs practice for skills. We need to be able to put our skills into practice in different situations and different scenarios. Neurodivergent children need more time, more practice, and we often struggle to apply skills from one situation into a different situation. Transference of skills, it's called, and it is something that many neurodivergent people have difficulty with. We don't necessarily make the connection between how a skill is applied in one context to how it can be applied in a different context. So again, explicitly teaching that, but also giving lots of different opportunities to practice in different scenarios and different setups. So the first practice sessions of any new social communication skill will probably be at home with you, with another safe adult, doing the role plays, playing with toys, acting things out together, figuring out what to say in different situations, maybe even building up a little bit of a script, a social script, to help to deal with these situations. So, for example, how to approach people that you want to play with. So helping them to actually develop a script that they can use, that they can practice over and over again, so that they get familiar with it, they get comfortable with it, and that they can actually then use that in different situations. And once they've become comfortable with something like that at home, you can give them opportunities to start practicing maybe with some other trusted adults, like nanny or granddad, or their uncle or aunt, some friends, some neighbours, anybody who knows your child and who's going to be supportive of them, patient with them. Over time, as they practice, and they practice with supportive people, they should start getting more confident, and they should start getting positive feedback that they're actually doing this successfully. And then you can give them opportunities to practice with their peers. So it could be, for example, other trusted young people first, so like cousins or neighbours or friends, children, and then gradually they will be able to start applying these skills with their peers, their classmates, and in less secure settings. But it will need to be a slow, steady, scaffolded approach for most of our neurodivergent children. They will need extra time, they will need extra support and extra practice of these social skills. Okay, so tip number 3, practice, practice, practice. Tip number 4, set them up for success. So many social interactions take place in settings that are really not conducive to neurodivergent people. They can be loud, overcrowded, awash with sensory input, and it's just too much for many of us. And if we think about our neurodivergent children, many of them will be spending most of their days in a crowded mainstream classroom, on a loud, crowded playground. If they go to birthday parties, they're often loud, big loud affairs for the younger children particularly, and so they are overwhelmed with sensory input, and that is too much to deal with when you're also trying to access your social communication skills. So many neurodivergent children will end up either shutting down or melting down in these situations, and that's not helping anybody. So we can't always influence what happens at school. We can't always choose where other people decide to hold their birthday parties, but wherever possible, we should try to set our children up for success. So if we invite children to a play date, for example, pick somewhere that's quiet, Instead of going to an indoor playhouse, take them to an outdoor playground. Or maybe invite them around to your house, somewhere nice and comfortable where your child feels secure, they know what's happening. It depends on the situation, it depends on your child, but think about different ways that you can reduce the sensory input so that your child has the mental capacity to focus on those social communication skills. Another great way to set our children up for success is to prepare beforehand. So you might notice that most neurodivergent people really do like to know what's going to happen in advance. We're often the people who will look up photographs of somewhere that we're going to if we've never been there before. We'll check out the menu of a new restaurant before we get there. We will plan out our route to get somewhere on maps. We need to be prepared. We need to know what to expect. That helps us to free up brain space for all of that social communication processing in the moment, if we're not also trying to deal with a whole range of new experiences, new information coming at us. So helping your child to do that, helping them to prepare in advance. So it might be looking up pictures of somewhere that you're going to go if it's new, or if it's somewhere that you've already been, just reminding them what it looks like, what kinds of things are there, what they can expect, and also talking about the expectations in that sort of social situation. So for example, if it's a birthday party, you can talk through what might happen. So when we get there, the birthday child will probably be with their parents, and lots of people will be giving them presents and saying happy birthday. So you're going to take your present, you're going to go to them, hand the present over and say happy birthday, and then you can go and play. Or for example, preparing them for things that are likely to happen. So the birthday child might forget to say thank you if they're very excited. They might have lots of people that they want to talk to, and so they might not spend a lot of time playing with you. People will sing happy birthday, it might be loud, you might want to cover your ears for that, or things like this. So just helping them to prepare, helping them to get themselves ready for the situation, helping them to be aware of what's expected of them and of other people in that situation. It's quite similar to the social stories. So you can do this by writing out a social story for particular events that you're going to, or particular situations that will help them to work that through. Okay, so tip number 4, I can't do this, I can't do numbers. Tip number 4 is set them up for success. Tip number 5, help them to find their people. And I think this is probably the most crucial one of all. We neurodivergent people are different. There's no getting around that. We're not neurotypical, we won't be neurotypical. That's not really the goal. What we do want is to find people who are like us, like everybody. Neurotypicals too, they want to find people who are like them, who enjoy the same things, who get them. So do neurodivergent people. It's just it looks a little bit different for us. So help your neurodivergent child to find other neurodivergent children and other children who enjoy the same things that they do. So this could be, for example, if your child really likes football or horses or drama, help them to find a club that they can join. So enroll them in, a horse riding class, or enroll them in a football club, or enroll them in a drama club, so that they can meet other children of similar age who share the same interests that they do. Our children are usually fantastic fonts of knowledge when it comes to their special interests, the things that they're really, really keen about. And so having that as a good jumping off point is a really good way of helping them to make those connections with other children. If you can't enrol them in clubs, maybe there aren't any in your area, they're too expensive, tell me about it. Help them to find children who have the same interests as they do, maybe at school. So help them to start noticing things like, have you seen anybody at school with footballs on their school bag or notebook, or horses, things like that? And then help your child to come up with a script, a way of approaching these children. Hey, I really like your school bag. Do you like football? Who's your favourite football player? Who's your favourite team? What team do you support? And so on. Help them to identify children who share their interests, and then to start making connections with children around their interests. Another fantastic way to help our neurodivergent children to find their people is to find meetups for neurodivergent children and their parents. There are many of them around the UK, many of them in various other places, different countries, and if there aren't, I'm sure you can set them up. Be prepared for a gathering of neurodivergent children and their possibly also neurodivergent parents to look a bit different from a neurotypical gathering. Some of the things that neurodivergent people do, that we enjoy doing, that are fundamental to the ways that we communicate, that we build relationships, are quite different. Many of us anyway, enjoy parallel play. So we don't necessarily always interact directly with each other. We like to do our own things, but together, in parallel, in the same area. So you might notice a lot of neurodivergent children playing what seems to be playing alone, but they're playing near another child. And often that's all we need. We like to have the closeness, the physical proximity, but we don't necessarily have to be interacting all of the time. Another way that a lot of neurodivergent people interact is info dumping, which, if you've been on the other end of it, can be a little bit overwhelming. But it's a way that we show our love for each other. We want our special interests, the things that we know so much stuff about, they give us great joy. It makes us really happy to know these things. And we want to make our friends feel that way too. So we will share that information with them as a way to help them have insight into us, and also to make them feel the way that we feel when we talk about our special interests. It might well look like maybe not good turn taking from a neurotypical perspective, but as long as we help our children to understand the basic reciprocity of friendship, they can understand that, for example, they don't have to keep asking questions back and forth. They can let their friend info dump and then expect that their friend will let them info dump back. So there's still the reciprocity there, it just looks a little bit different. It might be more of a monologue for a while for one person as they talk about their interest. We can also, if we think it might be helpful, we can also teach them how to, for example, show interest while they're listening, nodding, asking simple questions. Oh yeah, really? Tell me more. So on. And we can build those skills as something that our children can develop over time. So tip number 5 is help your children to find their people. The goal with any of this is not to get our neurodivergent children to be neurotypical, or even to get them to act neurotypical, because that's That's not who they are. It's not going to work. And besides, even if they do successfully manage to copy neurotypical behaviours, there have been a number of studies that show that neurotypical people can, in a flash, in a split second, identify people who are different. They know, no matter how successfully we are masking, we are copying and performing neurotypical behaviours like correct turn taking, eye contact, all of these things, a neurotypical person will be able, in a fraction of a second, to identify us as different, weird, and automatically like us less because of it. Now, that's really heartbreaking, disheartening, discouraging in a way. But you know what? The neurotypical people are missing out, because we are awesome friends. Neurodivergent people make the best friends. We are cool. We are individual. We don't mind doing our own thing. We don't need constant reassurances that somebody is our friend. We can go months, years sometimes without talking to a friend and pick back up just where we left off. We are amazing, and the neurotypical people are missing out. But my point is, that's an aside, my point is, we don't want our neurodivergent children to try to be neurotypical. That's not going to work. What we do want is for our neurodivergent children to be able to interact naturally, normally, and confidently with other children who will appreciate them. And that's where we come in helping them, particularly as they're younger. As they're older, they'll branch out and they'll start to be able to find these places, to find where they can meet like-minded people themselves. But particularly in the younger years, we need to do a lot of that legwork for them. We need to be setting up those play dates. We need to be taking them places where they can interact with children who understand them, who are like them, who share their interests. And that is, just as it is for everybody else, so important to have those connections, to be able to share and to have people get you. So, tip number 5, to sum up, is help our kids to find their people. And a bonus tip, if you've managed to hang around this long, and I think this kind of underlies everything that I've been saying, is bonus tip number 6. We need to accept our neurodivergent children for the fantastic neurodivergent people that they are. And we need to teach them to accept themselves too. We're not looking to make them neurotypical, but we are looking to help them to be the best neurodivergent self that they can be. So there you have it. Those are my tips for helping our neurodivergent kids, my neurodivergent kids, to make and keep friends. I will say it's a work in progress. My kids are currently 16 and 14. It is still something that they're struggling with, both of them. And in fact, I will put my hand up and say it's something that I, at 45, am still struggling with. I find it difficult to make new friends. I find it difficult to remember to stay in contact with old friends. And yeah, it's something that I have to keep practicing too. But I do keep talking to my children about it. We all talk together about our friendships. We talk about how they make us feel. We talk about situations that come up. We still sometimes do a little bit of role play to figure out what might be going on for somebody else in a situation, or how to, different ways to test out different ways of approaching a problem in a situation. So, there you go. I don't have all the answers, but these are my tips from my personal experience, what has worked for me and my children, and I hope that they will help you as well. That's it for now. I hope to see you again soon.